What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millzy, back with Hometown Commander for another episode of Millzy's Deck Techs. This week we're looking at a deck that I have had a ton of fun testing. This deck was actually brewed originally back in our head-to-head series, and I've kind of had this deck on the back burner for this entire time, testing it out, and I want to show it off for you guys today. Please like, comment, let me know what you think of the deck down below, subscribe, and let's get into it. Kyler, Sigardian Emissary, Selesnya humans. Kyler is a 3 green and a white 2/2. It says whenever another human enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Kyler, and other humans you control get a +1/+1 count, or +1/+1 for each counter on Kyler. So unshockingly, this is a human tribal deck. A lot of the goal of this deck is to get some pieces down to set up, get Kyler down, and then try to get as many humans as we can after Kyler comes down. We're going to kind of go wide so that we can go tall, right? So as after we get Kyler down, we want to get more humans down. Doesn't matter if they're tokens or non-token, so that we can build the board up with putting those counters on Kyler. I've seen this deck do a lot of really good things, but a lot of the things that tend to make the deck really good are kind of threefold. One, the pieces that we can use to slightly slow down our opponents. Thalia, our pair of Thalias, one having non-creature spells cost 1 more, and the other one making creatures come into the battlefield tap. Things like Giant Killer, which we can use as a piece of removal, but also can come in as a human. And our pieces of, removal and that kind of thing. The deck really is kind of built to be a smooth brain engine once it gets online. So we get the mana down, we start building, and we keep building. And I think the deck really has a couple end lines to finish the game. The first big one is to Mikey's chagrin, Rick's Steadfast Leader. This is a card that was released in the Walking Dead Secret Lair, but it's one of those humans that if you can stick it down with a decent sized board, just does a good job at helping end games. It says when it enters the battlefield, you choose 2 abilities from among First Strike, Vigilance, and Lifelink. Humans you control have each of the chosen abilities, and as long as you control 4 more humans you control get +2/+2. Most of them with this and Kyler out with any amount of counters on the battlefield, spell demise for your opponent. A lot of the times I like to pick Vigilance and Lifelink if there's no threats for First Strike being needed. But if it's the opposite, most time I just pick First Strike and Lifelink. That little bit of life gain just helps keep you alive, especially if you're going to get targeted. But the cool part is that some of our humans make tokens. Adeline, of course, every time we attack for each opponent, we get a human. So if she and Kyler are out and we attack, we're going to get 3 1/1 humans attacking each for our opponent, which means we're going to get 3 counters on Kyler and pop up our entire board. Cemetery Protector can get us humans when we cast certain spells. King Darian will just pump our entire board. Maya can get us 1/1 humans when we play lands, and Torrens can get us 1/1 whenever we cast a creature spell. And then we have things like Tuskard Captain and Absent Falconer that are going to give creatures we control the +1 counter on them certain abilities. Since we're going to have a lot of counters to go around, it's easy to get counters on all of our creatures with things like Lenore or Cathar's Crusade, or things like Hardened Scales. It's very easy to get counters on everything, especially with things like Machadius as well, to tap and you give counters to everything. So a lot of times Absent Falconer and Tuskard Captain will honestly just end up making all of our board hit even harder. We're playing your normal ramp package here in green, but the cool part about our board wipes is we can be kind of a little more selective with them. We're playing Dawning Verdict, which destroys all creatures with no counters on them. This most of the time is going to destroy none of our board, hopefully, and if not, we can always protect our humans, our tokens, or use like King Darian to protect our own tokens. But it's going to wipe out most of everything. And then something like Winds of Abandon, which would just kind of a the Cyclonic Rift of white, because you just exile all of our opponent's board and get in for that attack. We are playing the game finishers like Triumph of the Hordes. One of my favorite cards on this deck that I don't think it's seen much play in a lot of non-token decks, but that's a card called Call the Coppercoats from the C20 decks. We create X 1/1 human tokens equal to the number of creatures target opponent controls, or we could pay 1 and a white for each more opponents that we choose. This is one of those cards I've found where you leave 5 or 6 mana up on that opponent's end step right before your turn. You go into this, get 9 or 10 human tokens, depending on how many, anywhere, depending on what opponents you choose, and you proceed to just dump a bunch of counters on Kyler and go in for a big attack. We're playing things like Flawless Maneuver and Heroic Intervention to protect our creatures. Playing things like the Great Henge, hopefully to give counters of our creatures. Playing the Ozolith, of course, to harness those +1 counters and not give them away. Garruk's Uprising does a good job for us, giving our creatures trample. We're playing the package of things like Elemental Bond and Garruk's Uprising that allow us to draw cards when creatures of a certain power come in. The cool part about the way that Kyler's ability works is when a creature comes in, if a 1/1 comes in, if Kyler has 3 counters on it, it will actually trigger both of these when they come in and draw us that card. Of course, we're playing the classic, hardened scales for the +1/+1 counters. Laid to Rest is a card that I've seen a lot of people play, and I really, to be honest, haven't seen it much in the deck, but it looks like a card that's going to do a lot of good. Legion Loyalty is a ton of fun. It is the extreme upside for this deck if you can get it down, and will probably take an already bad attack for our opponents and push it off into completely lethal territory. Mirari's Wake is a really fun card in this deck. It tends to push the deck really far forward if we can get it going, both doubling our mana and giving all our creatures that flat 1/1. Wedding Announcement's in here, 1, because I love the card, and 2, because that backside bumps all of our creatures. So, pretty basic mana base. I am running the Snow basics to pay off a card called Into the North. This is a card that lets you go get a snowland from your library. This is something that I've been trying to do with some of the decks, because it just allows us to get 1 extra 2 mana ramp spell, going from what used to be just Nature's Lore, 3 visits, and Rampant Growth, and now getting that Into the North, into that slot with the Farseek. So that means that a lot of the times on turn, on that 2 mana slot, we're going to either ramp spell, Arcane Signet, Soul Ring, the Talisman, or the Signet. The whole goal here is to make sure that on that turn 2 to 3 area, we're getting mana ramp down and we're pushing our strategy forward. The one thing that I feel like I haven't done a good enough job with the deck text yet, so I want to make sure that we do a good job with this going forward, is kind of talking about what are the cards you're looking for in an opening hand or in your first few draws to know that you're going down the right path. The first of those is Rick. Rick does a really good job at kind of being that final piece that pushes the game forward, but a card like Catilda is really good, allowing your humans to tap for mana. Catilda can take a big board and help you put even more down onto the board by allowing all your human tokens to tap for mana, and does really great things. Seraph is a lot of good, giving all of our tap creatures that are attacking Death Touch, which just make them, even our 1/1s, harder to block. So still something to watch out for. And then one of the cards that can finish games for us, Champion of Lambhole, gets a +1/+1 counter every time another creature enters the battlefield under our control, but creatures with power less than Champion of Lambhole can't block any of our creatures. So the cool part about this is if this and Kyle are out at the same time, once Lambhole gets big enough, our opponents will not be able to block, and we can make all of our free attacks. The Kyler Commander deck gave us so many cool little creatures and reprinted some humans that do so many cool things. And basically what I've tried to do is pick an all-star cast of humans, plus, of course, Sigardian from Midnight Hunt. But I've just tried my best to kind of pick the best I can. This kind of squad of humans has changed a lot since I first built the deck. I've tried my best to put in a couple small humans that you can cast for cheap, just if you need one of those last second extra Kyler counters. Safi Eric's Donner is in here to protect Kyler if a board wipe happens and you want to put him back to not have to recast it, because Kyler does start at 5, so as soon as it gets to 7 or 9, even though we're in green-white, it's still a mess to deal with sometimes. I think the creature base in this deck is not perfect, but I think it's a ton of fun. This is a deck that I really have a ton of fun with. It it scratches a similar itch to kind of my Jetmir Tokens deck, where the goal is to go wide and have fun. The difference here is we're really sticking on that humans line. And I think what makes a deck like this fun, if you're similar to me, is that you have a deck that now any new set that comes out, if it has a human, you have a potential card to add to your deck. And that's what I really enjoy about this deck, is looking at new humans and saying, hey, does this fit in Kyler? Is this something that I can fit in? What do I take this out for? A lot of the main decks that I play follow that same strategy. Hey, here's a deck archetype that really a lot of things fit. The reason I like Kyler is it kind of mirrors my Winota deck for similar reasons. Hey, a new human comes out. Does it go in Winota? Does it go in Kyler? Can it work into those decks? Oh, it can? Okay, no worries. We'll wait for the next one. And I think that's really cool because it kind of gives you fresh things to look into your decks instead of just always keeping them the same. I mean, I think decks evolve over time, and this is one of those decks that has evolved a ton and is a ton of fun to play. If you're more on the budget side, I'm sure there's a lot of things you could cut from this deck to make this deck more budget. Cut the Sylvan Library, cut maybe a couple of the tutors, and you could probably cut the cost of the deck down. Rick, unfortunately, is a fairly expensive card in its own right. You could cut it and replace it with really, truly any of the other humans from Kyler's deck, or sorry, from Lenore's deck. I apologize that she was the face commander of that deck. A lot of those cards work in this deck. This deck is kind of optimized to be a little bit quicker off the draw. But I really enjoy this deck. It's a ton of fun. Link to the deck is going to be down in the description. Go ahead and check that out. And like I said, comment what you guys think of the deck. Are there any humans that I missed that I should add? Are there any Kyler combos that I don't know of that I would love to hear and have a discussion about them in the comments? But other than that, guys, I will catch you next time.